transformed David Bowie's album, and the Sex Pistols. Am I allowed to show this here? We went to meet Yoko Ono at her apartment in Manhattan. She opens the door and she says, "It's about time you got here." We weren't late, but he said, "All my friends are doing Absolut ads. How come you didn't ask me?" Frankenstein. Keith Haring, also a very famous, unfortunately passed on artist. This guy was a character in the television show Sex and the City. Anybody familiar with Sex and the City? The production company, HBO, came to us and said, "You know what? We want to build a story around Absolut. We want this guy to be an Absolut guy." So there was a continuing storyline for about 4 episodes where Absolut played a role. Of course, it was very successful. And at the end, this guy sued us. He sued us for taking advantage of him. You know, if they know you have money, they want to take it away. Exactly. Rodrigue. I was very proud of this ad because it was one of my ideas. And I remember we shot it the day after the stock market crashed the first time back in 1987. And when I first explained to somebody, yeah, the model is going to be the bottle, they go, "Well, the model is going to be the bottle. What does that mean?" That's the psychiatrist's couch. I think one of the favorite aspects of this campaign has been what we call the city series. We've done about 150 cities. All we were trying to do was make it popular in that particular city, but understandable everywhere else. What is this? Of course. You know, who said you guys weren't on the ball? We did this ad in 1992. Does anybody know why we wrapped it in red tape? Yes? No? Government. The government. The government's all wrapped up in red tape. It can't get out of its own way. Actually, it's a British expression, because they used to wrap all the packages in red tape. But has anything changed? Has anything changed in D.C.? I don't think so. So we put together these 2 mountains of euros, and we covered it up in clay. That's where the money is. You know, these Greeks, they have no sense of humor anymore. Bologna. Only in LA do people have so much money and so much bad taste that they would build a swimming pool in the shape of the bottle. Some of the ads are surprising, because in a certain sense, we don't want you to predict what the ad's going to look like. So, because if you can, it's probably too obvious. Vail is a ski resort. That's a broken bottle. It ran into a tree. I got a call from the owner of a company called Vail Resorts. I go, "What's the problem?" He says, "Well, you can't use that name." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, we own Vail Resorts." I said, well, Vail is the name of a city. You can't own the name of the city. And he goes, we'll show you. We went to court. The client settled. Why did the client settle? Because the guy threatened to pull all the Absolut off the shelves. Remember, this is a business. It's not a business about funny ads. I figured out that there were a lot of people following the campaign. Adults, non-adults, old adults, even kids. How did I know? Because I get all these letters about people who had ideas for ads. I'd find out librarians would talk to the press and they'd say that people were coming to the library and ripping the ads out of the magazines. They weren't happy. But I had to do everything I could to stop the client from being stupid, which was to try to put a valve on this excitement that the consumers had with, of all things, our advertising. Because the consumers, at a certain point, anything that they could touch that had Absolut on it, they wanted to have something to do with it. So we had managed to do something with the brand to make not just the vodka, which is obviously the product that makes all the dough, but everything associated with it special. So that years from now, all that stuff's going to be worth a lot of money. Now it's just worth a little bit of money. You go to eBay, you'll still find several hundred items. But my friend Melissa in New Jersey, this is her collection. I included her and a number of other Absolut collectors in my second book because I was fascinated by these people who would get together without any association from the brand to trade stuff, to trade stories. So what's the critical thing is, it's funny because this is 10 years ago. The critical thing, and it's so funny to say today, if your customers are like your brand, don't step on it. And sometimes even bad is good. This is an ad that was created and distributed by a Canadian firm, of course, Canadian, called Absolut Impotence. And the firm is called Adbusters. And basically they're an anti-marketing organization. They're kind of interesting. In fact, they're also interesting enough that they're some of the brains behind the Operation Wall Street, Operation this, Operation that around the world. In fact, they came up with the Operation Wall Street line. So they picked on us because if you're going to pick on a brand, you got to pick on something famous. So that's not always a bad thing. The Golden Goose. 1979, Absolut was a little company in southern Sweden that was about to close its factory. They couldn't sell the vodka. Finally, they found an exporter, an importer in America. A couple of geniuses there. They found an advertising agency. 25 years later, they sold the brand for $9 billion. They sold the brand for $9 billion to Pernod Ricard. Actually, they would have gotten more money, but Pernod Ricard had to take all the other bad brands from the company as well. Well, I was also a beneficiary of the goose. I wrote it, as you've heard 2,000 times, I wrote a couple of books because, I don't know, I'm a little good at marketing. I'm a little good at marketing, and I figured out that there might be a market for this. Thank you very much.